Welcome back once again. My dear audience, let's chat. A little bit of tea. Okay. I want to talk about the motion of energy, of consciousness, and to differentiate, as always, those two motions of consciousness. The, the motion of consciousness of time, that is of aspiring to something emotionally. Okay? Aspiring to something emotionally. And I'm talking about ego. That's what I'm talking about. Ego is an emotional aspiration, or an aspiration that stems from the heart. And it's to do with time. And basically, I'm making a premise that time does not belong in the heart. Time does not belong in the heart, because time says, okay, I am this right now, but that's not okay. Let me change that, make it better. We're talking about the feelings of the emotional state. That will always lead you to the ego growth, because that is the motion of consciousness. And so aspiration has no place in the heart. Okay? Attention is what has place in the heart. Attention. Aspiration already implies intention, which applies the movement of time. Time is a fascinating thing because time and space and motion and memory is one thing. Anything that moves, it's time. Anything that moves from what is now to what's going to be with intention is time. Now, you may say, well, what about infinity? Isn't there a movement there? There is a type of movement, but it's not trying to get anywhere. It is a flux. And there is the motion of infinite and the motion of time. The motion of infinite is not moved through your intention. It just is. Why am I saying all this? It is because it's very, very important, if you were to get something out of this, not just, I shouldn't say get something, but get the most out of your life and live the life that's supposed to be thrilling, the life that's supposed to be peaceful. And it is because you win the wars where it counts. By placing everything in its right place. So, okay. So now in the mind, aspiration is valid, because now that you're not looking to fix the negative feeling in your heart, now you can engage in the process of aspiring, I don't know, whatever that may be, whatever the art that you want to create, the place that you want to visit. Enjoy, be creative and playful with your life. In the mind, aspiration is valid, but it's not. You're no longer moving there to make something better. You just make it. You're moving there for the sake of novelty. It's like once you have joy, then you need the motion of mind for the enjoyment to happen, right? But if there's no motion of mind, there's no enjoyment, but there's still joy. You see what happens? You see once the joy arises, then the mind says, okay, what are we going to do with it? The mind no longer says, let's fix that negative feeling inside, because that motion of fixing negative feeling inside was going to drive you into this motion of time and put you to sleep into this matrix world, which is seeking betterment of yourself rather than placing attention on that negative feeling and realizing that that is the best feeling, which is the best thing that you can be at that particular moment. And as long as your attention remains there, there's a natural growth that seems to happen in your soul with no intention of trying to grow. Does that make sense? The intention is valid to grow your knowledge, the field of skills. Okay? And so, because you do need time to learn skills. Okay? Skills, habits, principles, whatever is necessary in the world of time where there's memory. And so you want to record a right type of memory in order for you to be able to express that natural inspiration, that joy that comes out. Because if it starts coming out, but you don't have any kind of way to express it, then it's just like a nice feeling going around. But that nice feeling, if you do have a way to express it, can turn into something of a art or science. Okay? Now, I want to apply this to basically day-to-day relationships between a man and a woman. So you could see the flow of these energies. Now, watch this. If a person does not keep their attention there, it's by definition, they're gonna have to aspire emotionally for something more, spiritually, become a spiritual seeker or whatnot, right? And it doesn't have to be spiritual seeker. It can become any kind of seeking, seeking for hedonistic pleasure. And it can come in all sorts of forms. Like, for example, in a matrix, you'll find that masculine and feminine cannot create anything unless they combine, right? So instead of exchanging that energy, the energy of light, which is masculine, the energy of love, which is feminine, instead of exchanging that energy through love, through actually making love, and I don't mean just an act of sex, it is a type of communication that happens at the heart level. But the people like that can only communicate when they are, an alchemist in a masculine sense, or a devoted woman in a feminine sense. It's just a type of way to remain in the heart through courage and surrender. Courage, like I said, it's more masculine, and it appears that you have to polarize in your heart to be 100% masculine or 100% feminine. That's the neutron star and black hole. Okay? The pure void is pure femininity. Okay, so you cannot go deeper unless you polarize 100%. It's a fact. You're going to be limited by how much you're polarizing as a man and how much you're polarizing as a woman. Does that make sense? That story, that cosmological story, that some stars turn into neutron stars and some stars turn into black holes, must take place. Ultimate masculine, ultimate feminine. I hope that makes sense. Now, and as long as you are in the process of it, you're good to go. Now, in the matrix, it does not happen like that. A woman must steal confidence energy, because through the seduction, through all sorts of means, through trying to humiliate the man, emasculate the man, whatever it takes for the man to despair. And the same thing with men. Men have to, manipulate the woman, like lie, cheat, like be crooks type of stuff, to sort of like deceitfully gain that feminine energy from the woman. And so there's this messed up relationship, that dark relationship. Okay. And the only way that relationship reconciles is through lust. So often you may see people fighting, and then they have sex, some lustful sex, which is a dark passion, to make up for it, to keep those energies in balance, right? So that's all dark stuff. Now, if you're a man and a woman who's just obviously decided not to belong to it seriously, and not to just create another trap, matrix trap, and say, well, that's my escape from the matrix, but you're still part of it. You do not escape by the matrix just because you believe that you're out. The only way it is through alchemy and devotion. That's the only way. That's the only way. How you're going to arrive there, it doesn't matter. But that's the only way. And it's universal as well. And you see that ego or belief systems are not comfortable with the only way, right? Ego and belief systems, they always grab a hold onto, no, that's my way. And then they can create in the belief system, well, there is no only way. There is no only way. It's all sorts of ways. Every single way in the matrix system is a type of seeking trap. It's like in a labyrinth, a dead end. But there is a true way out. If there wasn't a true way out, and if there wasn't just one way, which is universal, the eye of a needle, the northern star, if it wasn't universal, then it could be up for debate. And this is not up for debate. And this cannot be reached through the motion of the mind. The motion of the mind must stop, and then the opposite motion of consciousness must take place. This energy in the heart that is always seeking, always wants, like, pops the negative emotion, pops the negative thought, and it always does this. Like, is this thing. When you place the attention, it starts dissolving. And it can be challenging. And it depends where you're at in your life and who you're dealing with. You see? And you can be in front of a person who's very dark, and you can feel that energy is coming online and just trying to come out. But your job is to play with your attention and awareness. Nothing to do with thought. To settle back into the coherence. Okay? Not seeking to fix that feeling. Okay, and I'll talk in a second what makes you slip. Okay, now And if you're good and you're proficient at this art of alchemy and devotion, you will be able to handle any kind of uncomfortable feeling that arises within you due to some external factor, or like um, a person who carries a lot of darkness in them. Okay, and I said something in the previous video, is that there are two types of souls: souls who carry the darkness and defend it, and souls who don't want the darkness to be part of them, but sometimes they slip up and act from it. But they no longer, they, you know what, that these souls um, don't go in that direction, don't see that as a necessity anymore. Does that make sense? It's like it's a directional thing. So for example, like if you listen to this video, you probably already are gravitating towards your true center, and you probably are done seeking. You're probably trying. Okay, so that type of soul is the only type of soul that will respond. Does not mean that like the dark energy may not enter you and then might act through you in in sort of like a negative way, whatever that may be. But you will always go back and understand what happened. Does that make sense? It does not immediately make you, you know, an ace in this game, but you're already at least moving. And if slipping up, it's okay, because it was genuine slip up. It was not um, type of you know um, intentional. That if you did have awareness, you wouldn't have done that. Okay. And immediately, as soon as you go back to the heart, there is a realization, and there is type of dissolution of that, if you can do it. And there might be the feeling of regret, which is quite valid, and you have to alchemize that too. As long as if there is one. I think that, you know, people say, well, and have no regrets and stuff like that. It doesn't work like that. Regret happens, you alchemize it, because that's what it is. You look at it, you stay with it, you do your, you know, your tricks. And when there was regret, now there is a nice tone of feeling. Now that what makes you have no regret, because you have alchemized it. And look, like everything that I'm saying, my philosophy of life is quite simple. It is in order to acquire harmony and order in your life, you must eliminate disorder, not through patching mechanisms, because that's another way of seeking, but by looking at it and having the end of that disorder, and once the disorder ends, harmony arises. The other type of philosophy is that, well, let's not focus on the negative, let's keep focusing on the positive. And keeping the heart of coal and looking for the sugar. And it can, if you go real far with it, you go in real dark in this. Okay? And I noticed that some souls, I don't know if you, well, yeah, they're just not done playing that game. Even if you momentarily, you kind of show them the way, and they bring into their heart, and they have like this moment of love, and you know, or maybe if they take psychedelics and everything, as soon as that wears off, Cinderella effect, boom, back. And not only that now they're resenting you, because the ego came back online, and the ego is not done playing the ego games. So now it's going to try to revenge on you, try to take those points that it lost back from you. Does that make sense? This is what happens when you try to save somebody who's not open to be saved. Okay? But the fact is that You can definitely give somebody a helping hand. It does not make you an authority. It does not make them depend on you. You can show them, and then, oh, okay, this is how it is. Okay, now I know. Okay, good. Now they are independent. They can have their own um, access to the source. You know. But that helping hand does exist. But that helping hand can only extend, or should only extend, for somebody who's extending that hand out. Does that make sense? And it appears to me that there's a motion of ego, and only whenever it expires, then it comes back on the other way. And whenever the soul's already open, move towards the heart, that's when all of these things are possible. But if the person is not done, there's nothing that you can do. You can temporarily, like, snap them. You can, what I'm trying to say. And I could feel that right now. This is why the person who are not done with the ego games, I let them be. And so, to add a little more about this, is sometimes people say, well, you have to love everybody. That's another sugarcoating nonsense. It's not like that. Just open your eyes and see what kind of world you live in. I mean, if you're alchemizing energies, and you feel what kind of vile energies there are, and how much it requires of you to alchemize and to break through, then you at least have the direct experience of what kind of vile shit there is on this planet. And on an astral level, I suppose, on Earth, okay, has a lot. But you can also say that it's a lot of manure to grow a lot of flowers, and that's the right type of attitude. But to say that there is no manure, is not going to give you any kind of opportunity to grow any flowers. If you pretend that it's not a manure, and you pretend that it is everything, like, whatever that thing is. So no, it's not like that. You have to look at the most disorderly thing in order, as a consequence of resolving it, to have an order. And once you have that internal order, once you have that heart order, once you have that peaceful, blissful coherence energy, only then you say, okay, what can we create with our mind and with the body? Because then you're going to have to also create a certain type of order there, but you're not going to be creating that order out of disorder or as a solution to disorder. Does that make sense? It's just going to be creativity and playfulness, not a resolution of a problem. I mean, emotional problem. Okay? And if you're resolving a kind of logical problem, it will be like a game. And so there, it's valid. But even there, if you look at it and you say, okay, what's the root cause of this brokenness? And even there, you would have to make this conclusion that, like, you have to look at the highest leverage, and you would have to look at what is the most disorderly within the system to address first. And then you would address that. And then we say, what's the second? And then so on, so on. Okay? And still, the philosophy is this. Look at the most disorderly thing. And do your best, to, if it's the negative feeling, look at it, listen, and look at it. Okay? So, what happens when you approach life like that, every single person is then placed in appropriate relationship to you. That's the holistic thing. It does not mean that now you love everybody and we're all friends. No, we don't live in this type of world. I mean, not yet. There are yugas that apparently they say that they are like that. but we don't live in that type of yoga. That's why there's a lot of potential for the game. But you can still be in appropriate relationship with everybody, even with the darkest person. That if you sat next to that type person or whatever, or you interact, or some sort of um, way you would get in touch with that energy, it would feel horrible for you, the most vile thing ever. But you're gonna have to alchemize it, and if you manage to alchemize it, now you have appropriate relationship to the biggest evil, and it's a compassion. Because if it's really vile, then you need a lot of peace, and so then you have a lot of peace about that person. You have no, or if it is fire, if it's a lot of anger, if you want to hurt that person or whatever, then at least there's this light there rather than a fire. Okay, that does not make you open and lovey-dovey caring kind of thing about that person. That just makes you at peace with its existence, with its existence. And whether it's if you approach everybody, this is what, like, I've noticed right now. I want to have an appropriate relationship with all types of energies, but I wanted to have an appropriate, none of that nonsense like spiritual teachings that you have to love everybody. you know Definitely you shouldn't. There's people who function on these entities, and they may look very cute and they may look very seductive, but they're there to stab you in the back, and they have no capacity for genuine openness. Okay, and so you don't have to defend yourself from them, but because that's another way of you now creating this, you know uh, blocking yourself from them. No, you just have to alchemize that particular relationship, and then it's an inappropriate relationship to you. And if the appropriate relationship is not to give an ounce of your masculine energy, because it's a woman that is just basically carrying the entity to try to steal that energy from you in some sort of ways, and they do it if you have any kind of sexual openness, um, then they're capable of reaching out and taking that energy and emasculating you, because that's what they need. They need that energy to be creative and powerful. I'm talking about the witches, of course, and you would be surprised. Every single woman that I've ever met who's engaged in any kind of spirituality, this group spirituality or whatever, who's engaged in any kind of spirituality, like intentionally, is a witch. And and sometimes I would meet a woman who's not engaged in any kind of spirituality, but she's just genuinely loving. She's just, through her openness, handles all sorts of these negative feelings within her through openness. Not to trying to change something. And that openness is the most powerful thing. That openness is the most peaceful thing. In that openness, the spell cannot be casted. That is the most powerful woman. When her innocence cannot be taken anymore. That purity, just like that black hole. Nothing can be in a black hole. Does that make sense? No matter can enter black hole. And these types of women, you would not call them spiritual. They don't do anything that spiritual seeking at all. They're just very devoted, beautiful women. You know? And they don't need a trinket. They don't need any kind of altar, they don't need to do any kind of magic spells, because the genuine love, the genuine openness, genuine innocence is what carries them through life and protects them. That's real power, feminine power. None of these, witches can even understand it. I mean, for them to touch that energy is to die. Eventually all egos are going to die anyway, but that's the reality of it. So that is an appropriate place for this type of woman in relationship to me. Not a drop of masculine energy, not a drop of light can they receive from me unless there's genuine openness. And this is the deal, basically. Not a drop of that confidence energy, which is masculine, from me. And it's unbelievable to me. They seem to be like possessed by these entities. These succubus entities, And they're revolting to me, like they may look good, because all looks that they have is through the stolen energy. And as long as they keep on doing these witch things, as long as they have that energy, as long as they have some weak man that they can suck the energy from, then they have that. But as soon as that man wakes the fuck up and shuts all these gates of simping, it ends. Her look withers, her elegance withers. That's what happens with all the witches. I mean, look at the movies, and they deserve what they get. I don't know. In a grand scheme of things, you can say it's all a theater, it's all a show, and we're all playing the part and stuff like that. Okay, sure enough, but there's one thing that you have to recognize is that any kind of, sorry, this thing is moving. It wants to face that way. Anyway, we'll bring it closer right here with the stability. Okay. So now, I talked about the motion of consciousness, where there's a aspiration within the heart, what it leads to, what is the right way. I also said that there are two types of souls who are just not done playing with the ego games, and whether they take psychedelics, whether they get that temporary realization of oneness and everything, as soon as that wears off, they're not done playing those ego games. They will revert back, and they will still try to stab you in the back. Okay, so you have to have an appropriate relationship with these types of beings, types of souls. By the way, they're mechanistic. Any kind of movement from the heart that is programmed is mechanistic. If there is a memory in your soul, and there's type of seeking, say, okay, that's what it is, We're gonna seek the resolution for it. That's a program. It is. How can I explain it better? So if there is a disorder within the heart, the mind's gonna try to find like a compensating structure outside to match it and temporarily get that ecstatic feeling of hedonistic pleasure. And like I said, that may be doing some sort of like a satanic ritual, or emasculating a man in from the perspective of a woman, or cheating on a woman from a perspective of a corrupt masculine. Does that make sense? So, and anyway, so I said that there is this thing because look, like, I mean, I looked at it. Okay, I'm very careful not to make shit up, but I'm looking at the consciousness and I'm seeing the motion trajectory going like this on an ego. And even if you try to distract that trajectory, is still going on an ego. They're just not done. The trajectory must change, and only when trajectory has changed is the person is even like gravitating towards the heart. Always when the ego comes online and then goes off, there's an apology there. There's a genuine like, no, I don't want this in my life. I don't want this in our life. You see what I'm trying to say? Like, that's the type of attitude, not the opposite of one. When there's like a moment of weakness and the ego comes back online, and then is like, you know, fighting for its own like survival, and blaming and doing all sorts of things and stuff like that. So does that make sense? It's a very big difference. Whether someone can be helped and someone cannot be helped, and that they need time to learn all their lessons and hit the rock bottom, whatever they have to do, and you're no longer trying to save them and living your life directly as it is as possible, and connecting with people who are also already gravitating towards the soul, and understanding that they slip up, and you may slip up, and um, but just you keep going back on the horse. And I can promise you what's been happening to me. I've been slipping up a lot, then less, then less, then less, and now very rarely do I slip up. Okay, that energy still try to come in and take me over, and part of it is the game of letting it come in. But with your capacity of alchemy, you're capable of transmuting that energy, transforming. Okay? So, again, just to say, the direction of consciousness, the two types of soul, they're already gravitating towards the center or away from the center. Those who gravitate towards the center, you can play, create, they already are your friends. Those who are away from the center, you use them as a catalyst for the alchemy. Does that make sense? Because those that are away from the center, they're going to look for the way to steal your energy. Okay, they may even have moments of where there's like a genuine exchange of energies. They can be in the heart for a moment, but as soon as they go back on the ego, they're going to revolt, and they're going to try to steal that energy back. You see, they will see that innocence as vulnerability and weakness, and there's nothing you can do. And this, I learned this the hard way, and I realized that what a waste of energy trying to help somebody who's actually not really even asking for your help. Does that make sense? Of course it makes sense. Because in that person, you want to help them because you have this empathy, which is bullshit program. It's just simping, and you just leak that energy and just empower the ego even more. That's the difference when somebody appreciates that energy. I understand that energy is for creativity and beauty and collaboration and all these kind of things. And when somebody just says like, well, that person is stupid, it's just giving this energy away, so I'll take it. Okay. And like I said, people may look nice, but what kind of energy they carry, that does not lie. I don't care about how they look. I don't trust people. No one should trust people. You should trust the soul, and you should never trust the ego. Ego will always act through the program, so trust the ego programming, and trust the soul, because the soul will always act genuinely from authenticity and, you know, beauty. That's what I trust human soul. I do not trust human ego, period. Or I trust that human ego is going to do exactly what it's programmed to do. Okay? And then you can navigate the world through by feeling what that is. You can clearly feel it. And sometimes, you know, I could be in the presence of one woman and be like, unbelievable. This is just like this. There's no energy flow. And so then I have to just remain in my own center, but there's no energy exchange there because she's not open, and no channel, you know, is open to exchange energy fairly. And I can see all sorts of seductive channels are open, all sorts of traps, but there's nothing that can generally we can collaborate or resonate at the heart. So I know exactly what I'm dealing with. So these unfair energy exchange channels are closed through my attention placed on a center, and say, and of course I'm also beaming out the signal from my heart saying that this is where you meet me. You come through this, or you won't see me, and that's it. And don't knock on these other doors because the energy is closed. This you know, the candy shop is closed. You can try to seduce me any way you like, but I'm not going there. Like those buttons are no longer there. I do not value that type of energy exchange. I do not value this type of interaction. And you can try to trick me all the ways you want. It's just not going to happen. Period. This is a very, very just and fair arrival. It's not that it's even my opinion. I'm just using words to describe what's happening energetically. This is what the Hermeticism it's all about. To be hermetic and not to leak any energy. That all of your energy of the heart does not go in any kind of leakage, which is ego, but is being reciprocated. And that's when the energy is no longer leaking, magic happens. You know what happens? It happens that you no longer have like a normal energy. You get that special energy, that infinite energy. So you see how important this is. You may see like, well, that's just a relationship. Everything just happens in a relationship. Yeah, you know, all that stuff. And let me tell you, what motion of consciousness may make you slip. Okay? Because before you engage pleasure, hedonistic pleasure seeking, there's something happens, and that state is called despair. So my advice to you: never despair. But it's not enough just to hear these words, never despair. It's like, oh, okay, so I'll never despair. When that feeling comes on, that desperation or whatever, that defeat kind of thing, what you want to do is you want to remain your energy centered as much as it can be centered and attentive on the birth of that feeling. You don't want that feeling to bubble up. If that feeling bubbles up, you go into despair, and then next thing you know, you feel defeated, and then what next thing you know, it was like, well, I'm going to treat myself with some hedonistic pleasure. And there you go. You know, you're watching porn and eating crap that your body does not need. Okay. Or doing other thing, or getting angry and whatever, all that stuff. And I'm talking about from this, not that um you should not get angry. If there's anger, look at the anger. At any point, you can still bring your attention back to the disorder. Okay. You see how it is on this side of the world. um if you come across the energy that seems too vile for you to handle, um and if it's, then perhaps it's not a good idea to engage. But in I brought, and I shouldn't say brought, but like I came to a realization that whatever comes in my way, whatever the energy, how, no matter how vile it is, I can handle it. It will feel like I cannot. It will feel like I cannot, but that's the whole point. The leap of faith, it will be necessary for me, because it will may feel like I'm gonna lose my fucking mind, but if I trust that I won't, you don't. Okay. But this is a kind of hardcore thing, and I arrived it over many experiments and things like that, and this is why I never back down from energetic fight anymore. But in the past, they were, and it was the right thing to do, to not to engage them, because they would have taken me over, and I would have turned dark, you know. So, and that happens usually, by the way, when you are taking psychedelics or under influence some sort, or in a kind of place where you're not supposed to be, with people you're not supposed to be, like going to some fucking dark shaman ayahuasqueros or whatever, right? But if you are intelligent, and you're not going into these places and taking psychedelics and opening up to these energies that you don't know, you will not encounter the energy that you cannot handle. Now, ideally, you do not want to encounter the energy that you cannot handle, because if you encounter an energy that you cannot handle and it takes you over, um, to rid of it may take a long time, a lot of energy, and then may add additional hesitation of dealing with energies that seems like you cannot handle. You don't want that. So you want that type of development, gradual, gradual development. Now, it is all on the energy level and the heart level, and so environment may try to like humiliate it, may try to do this or that and stuff like that. What's important is the feeling. Okay, your spirit cannot be broken unless you go into the despair. And my strongest desire right now is to break the ego spirit. Like, to me, that gives me the most satisfaction because it fills my soul. The ego is always trying to break the soul spirit. So that's that tug of war that's going on. Okay, so no longer uh, this naivete is no longer necessary. Let's not kumbaya. Let's look at the world the way it is. At least that gives you a chance to change it, because You face the energy, the very root cause of why it's going on. You get the chance to alchemize that, break it down, create something, and then going to the theurgy and creating something beautiful and that carries that beautiful energy, um, turning demons into angels. And that's, you keep on doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. And right now, like I said, I made that video about destroying the Death Star. I do feel like um, we're very close to the boss. It's hard to get to the boss. You gotta remain on your golden throne, and also you have to start guarding your silver throne, which is um, when you are sleeping. Are you remaining lucid? This, to remain lucid is very important, because that's the vulnerability as well. That's when the, the matrix can come in and run the programs, because you're not guarded, you're sleeping, you're not lucid. But if you're lucid, your body is resting. Actually, when you're lucid, your body is resting better. Okay. And also, like, if you go into delta, if you are, you can be a type of lucid in the delta, which just euphoric sleep. That's what it is. And then when it goes to the REM, you want to be lucid, and you don't want the dreams to just run in your mind. You want to be lucid and clear as well. Because what happens usually, like, you keep your throne right, and you're peaceful and blissful, and you take a nap, or you sleep, and in the morning you wake up, again you have to alchemize everything. You say, like, fuck, I just been alchemizing this, and now I have to alchemize again. Yeah, it's better not to let your guard down. The vigilance, the eternal vigilance, which is what you really want. It's not an effort to be to become eternally vigilant. There might be some sort of like a game that you get to that point, but at least you know what's the point. The point of the game, that the light never goes out. That's the point. The light of attention and awareness never goes out, whether you're sleeping, whether you're awake, whether you're doing something, whether somebody's trying to take you out of it. That's it. Okay? And now we're close to breaking down the boss. You may say, like, what are you talking about? What boss? Um, there's an entity, and there are many entities. There's an entity that produces entities. So that's what I'm talking about. There's an entity that produced these programs, right? I'm talking about that, because the more your soul grows, the less energy is for that entity to exist. So you got to grow your soul even more and more. Take on even more alchemical challenge. Stay in the fire. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And eventually, that's going to break. Which means that it will no longer have the energy that is required to maintain itself, because you're taking in all the energy into your soul. And that's how you break it. Look, I'm not interested in just like all these yogis or whatever, meditate and just get to these states and like, great, okay, now I'm fucking off. No, I don't think like that's how my consciousness works. My consciousness is somehow tethered to everybody else's consciousness. And I can't just, fuck off. And I can't seem to be, blissing out or being in peace unless people that are connected with me are also like that. Does that make sense? So if somebody that are connected with me and they're off, that's also my responsibility, just as equal as their responsibility. So it seems like there's a shared responsibility to keep this energy of coherence afloat. And it's a type of these types of souls, these pneumatic souls. I'm talking about pneumatic souls. We want all of them online. And like I said, like I think that's the Death Star blows up whenever we reach a certain number of these pneumatic souls on their full-blown golden throne. That's when it blows up. I don't understand why these yogis in the past never managed to do anything tangible change, and and to destroy these entities in the astral. I know that it happened like in Italy during the Renaissance. I know it happened in America during the founding of America and these founding fathers. Um, Something magical was happening there, and they did see the vision of holistic society, and this is what they attempted to do in the contrast of the monarchic or matrix society. It eventually it failed, it did not survive. It was taken over by the matrix, but they did have that type of intent there, which I'm loyal to. I'm loyal to any kind of attempt of creating holistic society. I'm loyal to the people who tried to do that in Italy, and I'm loyal to the people who try to do that in the United States. These are the only two bubbles of Renaissance that I'm aware of. There might be more, but that is the most. I mean, that's what I respect the most. I don't respect these pratyakas who just did their thing, and I'm even questioning whether they did the actual thing. Does that make sense? Because they may have acquired the Luciferian light, which is a false one, and many of them did do that. And that was all backwards. And some of them perhaps were the real alchemists, but um, they were not really go back into the world and apply that philosopher's stone that they received. Then I don't know what they do with it. Like I really don't know. But it seems to me like what I'm trying to say is that I don't see how you could by yourself get all of that and not to have any kind of impact on the world. I don't I don't see how we can do that. You do have some impact on the world. Except that, like I said, the difference between bodhisattvas and pratyakas is that the pratyakas fuck off and bodhisattvas stay to finish the business. Because without the philosopher's stone, you don't have power to make any kind of real changes in the society. You have no power to create holistic society. But with the philosopher's stone, you can. And so there seems to be a choice to say, all right, now that there is this power, now that there is this, let's revamp this bitch. And there's a clear awareness that you don't revamp in the physical because that's just a consequence. You realize that there's an earth astral is where the battle begins, and your power comes from the causal, which is where the philosopher's stone was acquired. And then you can, when you go to the astral, you bring that light from the causal to the astral. You don't go to the astral just as a tourist. You go to the astral from the causal, from the heart. You bring the light into the astral. And then you have to bring that light exactly to the source of the biggest evil. And that's how you destroy the Death Star. This is all astral. This is not physical. And then when that is destroyed, then physically there's just going to be cleanup situation. There's not going to be any resistance towards trying to make a change in law that was corrupt. There was not. You see what I'm trying to say? There is going to be a cleanup situation that's going on. That's just not gonna. No dark force is going to have any luck anymore, because their luck is not going to be supported, because you know the Satan is gone. And that's why, you'll see. You will see. If you don't already. Peace, and I'll see you in the next one.